Greetings, fellow modelers, collectors, and glue sniffers. That's right, I'm back. Phil Lister of Lister Model Works here with another action-packed, exciting tutorial. Yes, I've been away for a while. I completely understand everyone's frustration and all that. I'm really sorry, but hey, as they say, life happens. All right, so today's video, or I should say this video, is on a 3D printed model of Christopher Reeve as Superman. So, 3D printed kits, you do them just the way you would either a vinyl, plastic, or a resin kit. We're using all the same paints, basically all the same techniques. This was a really fun kit to do. Of course, with 3D printed models, there's little cleanup involved. There's virtually no seams to eliminate, that sort of thing. So they're really kind of a pleasure to work on. There were a few rough spots here and there, and I'll point those out during the course of the video. But anyway, without further ado, get those paints out, fire up that airbrush compressor, and let's get started. Roll the video opening. Now here's the kit. All the parts laid out, the cape, the upper body, the boots, the legs. This is the base. I love how this base was done. It's like an Aurora-like base, which obviously is supposed to represent his Fortress of Solitude. And I just love the part breakdown on this kit is really good because the boots are separate from the legs. The upper body is a separate piece. The legs are separate, which really makes painting way easier. So I can do the painting and then do the final assembly. I did, however, glue the arms to the upper body because I had to do some putty work. Now the upper body and the legs do have a woven texture to the material, so I had to be careful about where I applied the putty and just how much. So, it was a little bit of a problem area, but not too bad. The fit was pretty good, except there were obviously, a slight gap, but I was able to fix that. The sculpt on the head was done really, really well. It definitely looks like Christopher Reeve. So I was really pleased with the sculpt. Here's the cape. The cape was, of course, all one piece, thank God. So I decided that even though I used a gray primer, I decided it would be best to use a white primer on the parts that were going to be given the brighter colors, the yellow and the red. So I decided to use this Badger primer, which is, it's an acrylic, and it does really well. It's a fine grain. It's already mixed. You can use it straight from the bottle and put it right into your airbrush, which is exactly what I did. I actually got this primer. They were free samples sent to me by the manufacturer. So I went ahead and, using about a medium air pressure, I went ahead and airbrushed the white primer onto the boots. I did both boots, the shorts, and also the chest emblem. So here the boots have been given a coat of primer. This way, the brighter colors will definitely be a little bit more vibrant over top of the white primer. Gray isn't that dark, but excuse me, when it comes to the bright colors, a lot of times even gray is a little bit dark and dingy. So that's why I decided to use the white primer, just to help the colors be a little bit more brighter and vibrant. And then there was some overspray on the emblem to the chest, so later on I decided to come back with a little bit of gray just to cover that up, only because I was afraid of the color difference in the blue. The blue in those areas might have been a little brighter than over the gray. And before I do all that, I'm going to airbrush the flesh on the hands. And then I'll use a brush and just cut in the blue around the wrists. See, I even airbrushed the white on the face as well, just so that the flesh tone would look a little brighter. Again, the sculpt was really great. It definitely looks like Christopher Reeve. I did discover that there were some craters or pinholes in the back of the cape, and I'm sure this is from the manufacturing process. So I decided that I was going to have to fill those in. And at first I was just going to use some acrylic modeling putty, and then I decided to go ahead and just use a little bit of Bondo. So the Bondo glazing and spot putty worked really, really well. What I like about this stuff is that it dries relatively quick, and I just applied it using a toothpick, and I just tried to keep it localized to each crater or hole, because I didn't want to have to sand it all down all over again. So this way, all I had to do was just sort of fill in every little crater, and I allowed the putty to dry. It doesn't take all that long. It might take maybe an hour or two, and then that way you simply need to go back and use some sandpaper. You can either wet sand it or you can dry sand. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to airbrush the yellow on the emblem. I just, again, just using straight yellow, bright yellow, I just airbrushed everywhere all over the emblem. And again, I'm getting overspray on the thing, but on the chest, but that's okay. The belt was also sprayed yellow. This way I get a nice even coat of paint. Here I've gone ahead and I've painted the red on the shorts and the belt loops. I did that by hand. I just simply cut in around the belt. And here again, the chest emblem, the red was painted by hand. And you'll notice how I went ahead and I painted the overspray area with some gray, because I wanted to even that out for when I painted the blue. Next, I'm going to tackle the base. So I decided that I wanted to do kind of a pearl color, but I wanted a bluish color at first because that was going to be the shadow color. So I decided to just go ahead and base it out in blue before applying the white. And at this point, I also glued in the crystals. So here I'm going to apply the blue. I'm going to airbrush it on. So I'm using this Cloudless by Apple Barrel. Now, of course, this has to be thinned in order to airbrush. So the whole entire base, crystals and all, were given a nice even coat of that color as kind of like an undercoat. I just made sure it went into all the nooks and crannies and all the little shadow areas. Next, I'm going to use this Folk Art Metallic. Well, I ended up using Deco Art, sorry. I used the Deco Art Pearl White. And again, I just gave that kind of an even coat, but I tried to keep some of the shadowy areas with the blue. Next, I decided to use this Folk Art Sparkle Varnish. And basically, it's a kind of a clear coat, but it does have little tiny sparkle bits. And I just kind of dab that on into some of the icy areas. I just used a kind of a rough looking brush, and I just pressed it onto the white areas, trying to concentrate it more into those I don't know, like snowy areas on the base. And this just adds a little bit of sparkle so that it takes on the appearance more more like ice than anything. So it just helps that, the idea that it's supposed to be ice crystals and all that good stuff. So I just proceeded to dab that around the whole perimeter and then randomly hit a few areas in the middle of the base as well. Now here I'm going to airbrush a bright red onto the boots. And again, this paint had to be mixed. I used Deco Art Americana bright red. And I just simply airbrushed that on, and then I force dried it using a hairdryer. I think I ended up having to go back and give it another coat. There were certain areas where it needed some additional paint. And now the cape has been painted red as well. Now for the flesh tone, I used a natural buff with a little bit of Georgia clay. And again, both colors are by Deco Art. I find that this paint, out of all the craft paints available, the Deco Art Americana line are some of the best. I mean some of the best. They blend together well, they mix well, they dissolve well. It's really a nice textured paint, covers well. And it's not even as expensive as some of the other brands. So I used a color that was a kind of a dark flesh, and you'll see why later on, because I'm starting with, I guess, what you would call the shadow color, and then I'm going to apply a highlight color. Now, how I'm going to apply the highlight color is I angle the head back, then I take the airbrush, and airbrushing at a slight angle from the top of the head, I spray downward. What happens is the highlight color hits the forehead, the bridge of the nose, and then finally the chin. Then, when you angle it, you'll end up spraying so that the cheekbones get hit, as well as the jawline. And of course you do this on the opposite side. This way you end up with a highlight color and you still retain the shadows. Kind of hard to see here, but if you look carefully, you should be able to see a little bit of a difference in tone. Here it is with the whole thing being painted. So I even painted the hands and did a little bit of highlighting on the hands as well. Next up, of course, will be the blue. And for that, I took some Americana crisp blue, and I actually did lighten it a little bit with a little bit of white. So the crisp blue and some white. And I wanted to check the color. So I brush painted on some of the blue, and then after I did that, I forced air dried it with the blow dryer. And then, of course, I attached the leg to the red shorts to give me a better idea as to the color. I was happy with this color, so this was the color I ended up using as the base tone for the blue of the costume. And here the upper body's been painted. The legs are both painted. See, by breaking the kit down like this, it sure made painting much easier. All right, next I took the base color and I mixed it with a little bit more white so I could make a highlight color. Of course, I did the same thing. I took the base color and I added a little bit of black, and then that was the shadow color. And whenever you're doing strategic painting like that, and you're lowering your airbrush pressure and all that, you want to use Folk Art Extender. This keeps the paint from drying fast at the tip of the airbrush. Keeps you from having any clogging issue, or helps keep from having any clogging issues. I use a lot of this stuff. It's hard to find in stores. I find that if you can order it online, much easier. Kind of hard to see, but here it is with the shadow color and the highlight color added to the blue. The base color blue on both the upper body and the legs was all painted by hand. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, please do that. The next exciting video will be the Dark Horse Creature from the Black Lagoon. Stay tuned. Thank you.